The council chamber was a perfect sphere. It floated in space above the neutral moon called Tertius Prime. Inside the sphere, representatives from 40 different species sat in their designated positions. Each position was designed for that species' particular needs. Some floated in zero-gravity bubbles. Others sat on heated rocks. Some were submerged in water tanks. The humans had simple chairs. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat in the human section and watched everything fall apart. She had been a diplomat for 20 years. She had seen arguments before. She had seen threats before. But she had never seen this. The galaxy was about to tear itself apart, and nobody seemed able to stop it. At the center of the sphere, 2 holographic projections showed the leaders of the 2 empires that were about to go to war. On the left side floated the Zephrani collective. They looked like living crystals. Light moved through their bodies in patterns that showed their emotions. Right now those patterns were angry red and orange, sharp and violent. On the right side was the Krath Dominion. The Krath looked like giant insects, but they were much more than that. Each Krath was connected to all other Krath through something they called the hive mind. What one Krath knew, all Krath knew. What one felt, all felt. Their representative was a massive creature with 6 legs and 4 arms. Its compound eyes showed no emotion at all. The problem was simple. Both empires wanted the same thing. The Omega Sector was a region of space filled with rare minerals and strange energy readings. The Zephrani said they had claimed it first. The Krath said their calculations proved they had the legal right to it. Neither side would back down. Sarah had read all the reports. She knew the history. The Zephrani and Krath had been enemies for thousands of years. They had fought 3 major wars before. Each war had killed billions. Each war had almost destroyed both civilizations. And now they were about to start war number 4. The Council Arbiter was trying to maintain order. The Arbiter was an ancient being that looked like a large slug covered in wrinkled gray skin. Nobody knew how old the Arbiter was. Some said 10,000 years. Some said more. The Arbiter had been settling disputes in the galaxy longer than humans had been building cities. The Arbiter's voice was deep and slow. It spoke the common language that all species used in official matters. Each word took several seconds to form. The Arbiter said that both sides had presented their cases. The Arbiter said that both sides had legal arguments. The Arbiter said that the law was not clear enough to make a decision. The Zephrani representative spoke next. His name was unpronounceable in human languages, so everyone called him Crystal Prime. His voice came out as musical tones that the translation devices converted to words. He said that the Zephrani would not accept any solution that did not give them full control of the Omega Sector. He said that to do otherwise would break their resonance, their honor, their very identity as a species. Sarah listened carefully to the translation. She was learning something important. The Zephrani were not just being stubborn. They were literally unable to back down. Their entire culture was built on the concept of resonance. When a Zephrani made a commitment, all Zephrani made that commitment. If Crystal Prime backed down now, it would cause something called dissonance. It would break the harmony of their entire civilization. Then the Krath representative spoke. The Krath did not have individual names. This one was called Hive Node 773. It spoke in clicking sounds that the translators turned into flat, emotionless words. The Krath said that their calculations showed a 78% probability of victory in a war. The Krath said that all Krath minds had reviewed the data. The Krath said that the consensus was clear. War was the optimal solution. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The Krath were not threatening war. They were not angry. They were simply stating what their calculations showed. To them, war was just math. They had calculated all the possibilities. They had determined that fighting was better than any other option. And once the Krath hive mind reached consensus, there was no changing it. They would follow their calculations no matter what. The Arbiter tried one more time. Could the Omega Sector be divided? Could both empires share it? Could a neutral party oversee it? Each suggestion was rejected immediately. The Zephrani could not share what they had claimed. It would break resonance. The Krath could not accept an outcome their calculations showed was suboptimal. It would violate consensus. Other council members tried to speak. The Vorten representative, a being made of pure energy, suggested waiting 10 years to gather more data. Rejected. The Minari ambassador, a small furry creature with 8 legs, proposed creating a joint research station. Rejected. The Helkan delegate, a massive creature with blue scales, offered to mediate private talks between the two empires. Rejected. Sarah watched all of this and realized something that terrified her. Every single species in the council chamber was following a script. They were all doing exactly what their biology and culture told them to do. The Zafrani could not act in a way that broke resonance because their entire consciousness was built on harmonic patterns. The Krath could not ignore their calculations because their hive mind operated on pure mathematical consensus. Even the other species trying to help were trapped. The Vortan always suggested waiting and studying because they experienced time differently than others. The Minari always suggested cooperation because their species had evolved in large family groups. The Helkan always offered to mediate because their culture valued strength through diplomacy. They were all prisoners of their own evolutionary psychology. They could not think outside the patterns their species had developed over millions of years. The Arbiter spoke again. Its voice was heavy with something that might have been sadness. The Arbiter said that all diplomatic options had been exhausted. The Arbiter said that under Galactic Council law, when diplomacy failed, each empire had the right to defend its interests. The Arbiter said that a countdown would begin. Both empires would have 1 hour to withdraw their claims or withdraw their fleets. If neither side withdrew within 1 hour, their defense pacts would automatically activate. 6 other major powers would be pulled into the conflict. Dozens of minor species would have to choose sides. The entire galaxy would be at war within days. A holographic timer appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed 60 minutes. Then it began counting down. 59 minutes and 59 seconds. 59 minutes and 58 seconds. Sarah watched the numbers decrease. Her hands gripped the armrests of her chair. She had been part of the Galactic Council for only 40 years. Humanity had only made contact with alien life 40 years ago. Before that, humans had been alone in the universe. Now humans were the newest members of a galactic community that was about to destroy itself. Around the chamber, other ambassadors were speaking to their home governments. They were making reports. They were receiving instructions. They were following protocol. Everything was very orderly, very civilized. They were all watching billions of lives slip away, and they were doing it politely. Sarah looked at the timer. 55 minutes remaining. She thought about her training. She thought about the diplomacy courses she had taken. She thought about the 20 years she had spent learning to work with alien species. All that training had taught her to be patient, to be understanding, to respect other cultures, to follow proper procedures. But none of that training would stop a war. Following the rules would not save anyone. Being patient and understanding would just mean sitting quietly while the galaxy burned. Sarah Chen had been trained as a diplomat. But before that, she had been trained as a human. And humans, Sarah knew, had one great talent that no other species seemed to have. Humans could change the rules in the middle of the game. She stood up from her chair. The sudden movement drew a few glances from nearby ambassadors. Humans were usually quiet during council sessions. They were new. They were supposed to learn and observe, not make dramatic gestures. Sarah walked toward the center of the chamber. There was no protocol for what she was about to do. She was not scheduled to speak. She had not requested permission. She had not filed the proper forms. The Arbiter's large eyes fixed on her. The Arbiter seemed confused. Everyone seemed confused. Crystal Prime made a sound like breaking glass. Hive Node 7. 7-3 tilted its head at an angle that looked wrong. Sarah reached the center of the chamber where the holographic timer floated. 53 minutes and 42 seconds. She turned to face the Arbiter. She spoke clearly, making sure the translation devices would pick up every word. She said that she was invoking humanity's right of irrational intervention. She said it loudly and officially. The chamber went silent. Every ambassador, every aide, every observer stopped what they were doing. They all stared at Sarah. The Arbiter blinked slowly. Its ancient mind searched through thousands of years of council law. Then it found what it was looking for. The Arbiter spoke carefully. Yes, it confirmed. There was such a provision. It had been added to the council charter when humans joined. It had been meant as a joke. When humans first arrived at the council, they had been very strange. They did not follow clear patterns. They could not be easily predicted. The older species had been amused and slightly concerned. So they had added a special clause to the law. If a situation seemed hopeless and if all logical options had failed, then the human representative could invoke the right of irrational intervention. It was meant to be funny. A way to acknowledge that humans were unpredictable. Nobody ever expected it to actually be used, but Sarah had studied the council charter very carefully. She knew every clause. She knew every exception. And she knew that according to the law, when this right was invoked, the council was required to hear the human representative speak. They were required to listen to whatever irrational, illogical, unpredictable thing the human wanted to say. The arbiter looked at Crystal Prime, then at Hive Node 773, then back at Sarah. The law was clear. They had to listen. Sarah looked at the timer. 51 minutes and 18 seconds. She had no plan. She had no carefully researched proposal. She had nothing but one crazy idea and the hope that being human would be enough. She began to speak. And she started with something no other species would ever think to do. She told them a story. Sarah stood in the center of the council chamber with 40 different species staring at her. The holographic timer showed 49 minutes remaining. She could feel her heart beating fast. Her hands were sweating, but she kept her voice steady. She said that she wanted to tell them about 2 countries on Earth. Their names were India and Pakistan. She said that these 2 nations had been enemies for a long time. They had fought several wars. They both had nuclear weapons, weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. Crystal Prime made a sound like wind chimes. The translation device spoke his words. He said that this was irrelevant. He said that human tribal conflicts were not comparable to galactic empire disputes. He said that Sarah was wasting precious time, but the arbiter held up one large, wrinkled appendage. The law was clear. Sarah had invoked the right of irrational intervention. The council was required to listen. Crystal Prime made an angry sound but went silent. Sarah continued. She said that India and Pakistan had come to the brink of nuclear war many times. In 1999, they fought in the mountains. Both sides mobilized their nuclear weapons. In 2001, terrorists attacked the Indian parliament. India blamed Pakistan. Both countries prepared for war. In 2008, terrorists attacked Mumbai. Again, war seemed certain. She said that military analysts predicted that a war between India and Pakistan would kill 20 million people in the first week. The nuclear fallout would spread across Asia. Billions would suffer from radiation and starvation. It would be a catastrophe. Hive Node 773 spoke. Its clicking voice was converted to flat words. It said that clearly these nations had calculated that war was suboptimal. It said the math must have shown that peace was more beneficial. It said this proved the value of proper calculation. Sarah shook her head. No, she said. That was not what happened. The calculations showed that war would be terrible for both sides. But the politicians on both sides knew that backing down would end their careers. The military leaders knew that showing weakness would make them look bad. The people were angry and wanted revenge. She said that by pure logic, by calculating costs and benefits, war should have happened many times. The math supported it. The emotion supported it. The political pressure supported it. So why didn't it happen? Crystal Prime asked. His crystalline body pulsed with confused orange light. Because, Sarah said, humans have this strange ability to change our minds at the last second. We can be absolutely committed to something one moment and then completely reverse course the next moment. And we do not see this as weakness. We see it as wisdom. She said that in each crisis, when the world was hours away from nuclear war, something happened. A phone call between leaders, a diplomatic back channel, a sudden realization that maybe, just maybe, there was another way. And each time both sides stepped back from the edge. They did not call it surrender. They called it restraint. They did not call it weakness. They called it responsibility. The politicians who avoided war were praised, not punished. The people celebrated peace, not war. The chamber was very quiet. Sarah looked around at the assembled species. She could see that they were confused. What she was describing did not make sense to them. The arbiter spoke slowly. It said that what Sarah described was illogical. It said that if both sides knew war was suboptimal, they should have never reached the brink. And if they did reach the brink, backing down should have damaged their social standing. This was how all species operated. Exactly, Sarah said. That is how all species operate. Except humans. We are the only species that can hold 2 opposite ideas in our heads at the same time. We can believe war is necessary and also believe peace is better. We can make a commitment and break it. We can say we will never surrender and then surrender, and we can make all of this seem reasonable. The timer showed 43 minutes remaining. Sarah took a deep breath. She needed to make them understand. She needed to show them that the way they were thinking was too limited. She turned to Crystal Prime. She said that she understood the Zafrani problem. If he backed down now, it would break resonance. All Zafrani would feel the dissonance. The harmony of their civilization would be disrupted. Crystal Prime's light patterns showed agreement. Yes, he said. You understand. This is why we cannot yield. But Sarah said, what if you are not yielding? What if you are doing something better? What if the question is wrong? Crystal Prime's patterns shifted to confused blue. He asked what she meant. Sarah said that right now both empires were asking who should control the Omega sector. The Zafrani said they should. The Krath said they should. They were fighting over who gets the prize. But what if that was the wrong question? What if the right question was, should anyone control it at all? Now multiple ambassadors were leaning forward in their seats. The Vorten energy being began to glow brighter. The Minari ambassador's ears perked up. Even the Helkan delegate stopped looking at his communication device. Sarah continued. She said that the Omega sector had rare minerals and strange energy readings. Both empires wanted to mine it and study it. But what if mining it was the wrong approach? What if the sector was more valuable as a mystery than as a resource? Hive node 773 clicked rapidly. Its translation device struggled to keep up. It said that resources had measurable value. Mysteries had no value. This logic was flawed. Sarah smiled. She said that was exactly the kind of thinking that would lead to war. Everyone was so focused on immediate measurable benefits that they could not see other possibilities. She said that humans had a concept called a nature preserve. When humans found something valuable in nature, they sometimes chose not to exploit it. They would protect it instead. They would study it carefully. They would preserve it for future generations. And they would find that this brought them more value than mining or destroying it ever could. The Omega sector, Sarah said, could become the first galactic preserve. A place where the strange energy and rare minerals were studied but not exploited, where multiple species could send researchers, where the mystery was preserved instead of destroyed. Crystal Prime's light patterns showed interest but also doubt. He said that the Zafrani had claimed the sector. To give up that claim would still break resonance. The problem remained. No, Sarah said. The problem only remained if you use the same words. Words matter. Framing matters. You would not be giving up your claim. You would be transcending it. She said that instead of being the empire that fought over rocks, the Zafrani would become the empire that was wise enough to see beyond simple ownership. Instead of winning a mining operation, they would win respect across the galaxy. Instead of one more resource to exploit, they would have access to ongoing research and discovery. The Zafrani value harmony, Sarah said. She had done her research. She knew their culture. What creates more harmony? A war that kills billions or a choice to pursue knowledge instead of conflict? Crystal Prime was silent. His light patterns shifted through several colors. Blue uncertainty, yellow consideration, hints of green that might have been hope. Sarah turned to Hive node 773. She said that she understood the Krath position too. Their calculations showed that war had a 78% probability of success. The hive mind had reached consensus. Going against consensus was not possible for the Krath. But, Sarah said, the calculations were based on certain assumptions. They assumed that the only options were war or surrender. They assumed that value was measured only in resources extracted. They assumed that the future could be perfectly predicted. What if those assumptions were wrong? Hive node 773 tilted its head. It said that the Krath hive mind did not make wrong assumptions. Millions of Krath had reviewed the calculations. The data was solid. Sarah said that she did not doubt the quality of the calculations. She doubted the completeness of the data. The Krath had calculated the probability of winning a war. But had they calculated the probability of discovering something in the Omega sector that could revolutionize Krath technology? Had they calculated the value of being known across the galaxy as the species that chose wisdom over warfare? She said that the Krath hive mind was extremely good at analyzing known variables. But the Omega sector was full of unknown variables. Strange energies that nobody understood. Phenomena that defied current physics. If the Krath turned the sector into a research preserve instead of a battlefield, they would gain access to all of that unknown data. And unknown data, Sarah said, was what the Krath hive mind needed most. New information led to new calculations. New calculations led to new possibilities. The Krath civilization could stagnate by exploiting known resources, or it could grow by pursuing unknown mysteries. The timer showed 38 minutes remaining. The chamber was completely silent now. Every species was focused on Sarah. Even the Arbiter's ancient eyes showed something that might have been surprise. Sarah took another breath. She had their attention. She had shown them a new possibility, but she still needed to make it real. She still needed to give them something concrete. She said that she had a proposal. The Omega Sector would become a galactic preserve. Both the Zephrani and the Krath would give up their claims to ownership. But they would not give up access. They would both have permanent research stations in the sector. They would both contribute scientists and resources. And who would manage this preserve? Crystal Prime asked. Who would ensure that both sides honored the agreement? Who would prevent cheating? Sarah smiled. She said, we will. Humanity will manage the Omega Sector Galactic Preserve. The chamber erupted in shocked sounds. Crystalline chimes. Insectoid clicks. Energy being hums. Furry creature squeaks. Every species made their version of a surprised noise. The Helkan delegate spoke up. His deep rumbling voice filled the chamber. He said that humans were the newest species in the council. They had been part of galactic civilization for only 40 years. How could they be trusted with such an important responsibility? Sarah looked directly at him. She said, exactly because we are new. We have no ancient grudges, no old territorial claims, no 1,000-year-old grievances. We are the only major species that has no history with either the Zephrani or the Krath. She said that every other species in the council chamber had taken sides long ago. Some supported the Zephrani. Some supported the Krath. Some tried to stay neutral but failed. Only humanity was truly outside the conflict. And more importantly, Sarah said, humans understood something that other species seemed to have forgotten. She said that humans knew what it was like to be flexible, to change course, to see multiple possibilities where others saw only one path. She said that if the Zephrani ran the preserve, the Krath would never trust it. If the Krath ran it, the Zephrani would always suspect manipulation. But if humans ran it with all our unpredictable, irrational, flexible thinking, maybe both sides could accept it. The timer showed 33 minutes remaining. Sarah could feel the weight of billions of lives pressing down on her. She had presented her idea. She had reframed the question. She had offered a solution. Now she needed them to choose. She needed Crystal Prime to see transcendence instead of surrender. She needed Hive Node 773 to accept incomplete data as an opportunity instead of a threat. She needed them to be more than their programming, more than their evolution, more than their ancient patterns. She needed them to change. And change, Sarah knew, was the hardest thing any species could do. The timer showed 30 minutes remaining. Sarah stood in the center of the council chamber and waited. She had made her proposal. She had offered a way out. Now she needed to prove something that no other species seemed to understand. She needed to prove that uncertainty was not weakness, that chaos was not failure, that being unpredictable was actually a strength. Crystal Prime spoke first. His light patterns were cautious yellow mixed with doubtful blue. He said that Sarah's proposal was interesting. He said it had merit, but he said there was a problem. The Zephrani needed certainty. They needed to know that if they gave up their claim, the preserve would actually happen. They needed guarantees. Sarah nodded. She understood. She turned to the Arbiter and asked if she could access the Council's historical database. The Arbiter was surprised but agreed. This was unusual, but Sarah had invoked the right of irrational intervention. The normal rules were suspended. A holographic display appeared next to the countdown timer. Sarah connected her personal device to it. She said that she wanted to show everyone something. She wanted to show them 40 years of human diplomatic records. The display began showing data. Treaties that humans had signed and then modified. Agreements that seemed permanent until they were renegotiated. Alliances that changed completely within a single generation. Trade deals that were supposed to last centuries but were revised after a few years. The Vorton energy being made a confused humming sound. It said that the data showed humans were unreliable. How could anyone trust a species that changed agreements so frequently? Sarah smiled. She said, exactly. You cannot predict us. And that is precisely why this can work. She changed the display to show something else, human history from before they joined the Galactic Council. She showed wars that lasted decades and then ended with former enemies becoming close allies. She showed nations that had tried to destroy each other and then worked together on scientific projects. She showed humans who had fought bitterly over ideology and then found common ground. She showed Germany and France, enemies for centuries, 3 massive wars, millions dead, and then, after World War II, they became the foundation of the European Union. Partners instead of enemies. She showed the United States and Vietnam. A bitter war, massive destruction, deep hatred, and then decades later, trading partners, allies in regional politics. The war became history, not destiny. She showed Japan and the United States. Pearl Harbor, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, total war, and then within a generation, close allies. One of the strongest partnerships on Earth. The council chamber was completely silent. Every species was watching the display. They were seeing something that did not exist in their own histories. They were seeing enemies become friends, rivals become partners, hatred become cooperation. Hive Node 773 spoke. Its clicking sounds were faster than usual. The translation struggled. It said, "This is impossible. Once conflict occurs, sides are established. Patterns are set. The probability of reversal is less than 1% for any species we have studied." "Yes," Sarah said. "For any species you have studied. But you have not studied humans long enough. We have only been in the council for 40 years. You have watched us for less than one human lifetime. You have not seen what we can do over generations." She said that humans had a strange relationship with time. Other species seemed to have long memories. The Zafrani remembered every dissonance for thousands of years. The Krath stored every calculation in their hive mind forever. Most species in the council could recall their entire history clearly, but humans forgot. Not everything, not completely. But humans had this ability to decide that the past was the past. They could choose to move forward. They could choose to see former enemies as potential friends. They could hold a grudge for centuries and then let it go in a single moment. The Minari ambassador spoke up. Her squeaky voice was translated into words. She said that this sounded like amnesia, like a mental defect. How could forgetting be a strength? Sarah turned to face her. She said it was not forgetting. It was choosing. Humans remembered their history. They taught it in schools. They built monuments to remember wars, but they also chose when to let go. They chose when to stop being defined by old conflicts. She said that other species were prisoners of their own perfect memories. They could not escape their past because they could not forget it. Every old grievance was fresh. Every ancient insult was still real. The Zafrani and Krath had been enemies for thousands of years, and they would be enemies for thousands more unless they could learn to let go. But humans, Sarah said, humans could help them let go, because humans understood how to change, how to adapt, how to be different tomorrow than they were today. The timer showed 25 minutes remaining. Sarah looked at Crystal Prime. She looked at Hive Node 773. She could see them processing what she had shown them. She could see their alien minds struggling with concepts that did not fit their normal patterns. Crystal Prime's light patterns shifted. He said, "Your proposal is that humans would manage the Omega sector. But you have shown us that humans are unpredictable. You change your minds. You break agreements. You forget commitments. Why should we trust you?" Sarah took a deep breath. This was the crucial moment. She said, "You should trust us because we are unpredictable. You should trust us because we change. You should trust us because we are not locked into ancient patterns." She said that if the Zafrani managed the preserve, they would do it with perfect resonance. Every decision would be harmonious. Every action would maintain their patterns. But that also meant they could never adapt to new situations. They would manage the preserve exactly the same way forever. She said that if the Krath managed it, they would do it with perfect calculation. Every resource would be optimally allocated. Every decision would maximize efficiency. But that also meant they could never handle the unexpected. When something unpredictable happened, they would have no way to respond except with more calculation. But humans, Sarah said, humans were built for the unexpected. Humans thrived on chaos. When plans failed, humans made new plans. When situations changed, humans changed with them. When the rules stopped working, humans changed the rules. She said that the Omega sector was full of unknowns, strange energies, unexplained phenomena, things that current science could not explain. It needed managers who could handle uncertainty, who could adapt to surprises, who could make decisions without having all the data. And that, Sarah said, was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not our logic, not our technology, not our resources. Our gift was our chaos, our ability to function without certainty, our willingness to make it up as we went along. Hive Node 7. 7-3 was very still. Its compound eyes reflected the countdown timer. It said, "The hive mind is calculating. The data you have presented is difficult to process." "It does not fit our models," Sarah nodded. She said, "I know it does not fit. That is the point. Your models are built on species that follow patterns. Humans break patterns. We are the chaos variable that your calculations cannot account for." She said that the Krath hive mind was trying to calculate the probability of success, but there was no way to calculate it. Because humans would do unexpected things. They would make strange decisions. They would find solutions that should not work but somehow did. And that uncertainty, Sarah said, was exactly what made the proposal fair. Neither the Zafrani nor the Krath could predict what humans would do. Neither side could game the system. Neither empire could manipulate the preserve managers, because the managers themselves did not know what they would do until they did it. The Arbiter spoke. Its ancient voice was thoughtful. It said, "Ambassador Chen, what you are describing is essentially asking both empires to accept total uncertainty. You are asking them to give up control and trust in chaos. This has never been done before." "Yes," Sarah said, "that is exactly what I am asking. Because the alternative is war, and war is certain death for billions. I am offering uncertain peace. Uncertain peace is better than certain death." She looked around the chamber. She looked at all the different species. She saw the Vortan energy being flickering with consideration. She saw the Minari ambassador's ears twitching with thought. She saw the Helkan delegates' scales shifting color. She saw Crystal Prime's light patterns cycling through every color in rapid succession. Confusion and consideration and fear and hope all mixed together. She saw Hive Node 773's body language change. The compound eyes were unfocused. The creature was clearly communicating with the hive mind across light years of space. Millions of Krath were debating, calculating, processing. The timer showed 20 minutes remaining. Sarah felt exhaustion hitting her. She had been speaking nonstop, using every argument she could think of, pulling from every bit of human history and culture she knew. She had given everything she had, but she had one more thing to do. One more demonstration, one final proof that humans were different from every other species. Sarah walked to the edge of the chamber. There was a force field there that protected the council members from the vacuum of space outside. She stood at the edge and looked out at the stars. Then she did something that made every alien in the chamber freeze. She deactivated her personal shield, the device that every council member wore, the technology that protected them from each other's various energy fields and chemical emissions and electromagnetic interference. Without the shield, Sarah was vulnerable. The Zafrani's crystalline resonance could disrupt her nervous system. The Krath's pheromones could confuse her brain chemistry. The Vortan's energy field could interfere with her heart rhythm. Any of the assembled species could harm her, even accidentally, just by being too close. The Arbiter made a sound of alarm. It said, "Ambassador Chen, you must reactivate your shield immediately." "This is extremely dangerous." Sarah did not move. She stayed at the edge of the chamber. She spoke clearly so everyone could hear. She said, "I am betting my life that you are both more than your programming. I am betting my life that you can choose instead of just following your instincts." She said, "If you refuse my proposal and go to war, your agitation will create energy fluctuations. Those fluctuations will likely kill me while I stand here unshielded. If you accept my proposal, you will be calm enough that I will survive," she said. "So choose. Choose war and I die here now, proving that different species cannot coexist peacefully. Or choose peace and I live, proving that we can all transcend our base programming." The chamber was dead silent. The only sound was the soft hum of the countdown timer. 18 minutes and 30 seconds. 18 minutes and 29 seconds. Crystal Prime's light patterns went completely white. Pure shock. He said, "This is madness. You cannot gamble with your own life like this." Sarah smiled. She said, "I am human. We gamble with our lives all the time. Every time we explore something new. Every time we try something that has never been done. Every time we trust someone we should not trust. We gamble and sometimes we lose. But sometimes we win." She said, "Right now, I am gambling that you are capable of more than anyone thinks. I am gambling that the Zephrani can evolve their concept of resonance. I am gambling that the Krath can accept incomplete data. I am gambling that two ancient enemies can become something better, and I am gambling my life on it. Because if I am not willing to risk everything, why should you be?" 15 minutes remaining. Sarah stood at the edge of the chamber, unshielded, vulnerable, waiting. She had done everything she could. She had argued. She had explained. She had demonstrated. Now she could only wait and hope that she had been right about one thing. Hope that intelligence was more than just programming, that consciousness was more than following patterns, that even ancient species could learn something new from the chaos of humanity. 14 minutes, 13 minutes and 59 seconds. The timer counted down steadily. Sarah Chen stood at the edge of the council chamber with no shield protecting her. She could feel the various energies washing over her body, the crystalline vibrations from the Zephrani, the chemical signals from the Krath, the electromagnetic pulses from the Vortan, all of it mixing together in ways that made her head ache and her heart race. But she did not put her shield back on. She did not step back. She stood there and waited. Crystal Prime was the first to move. His massive crystalline body shifted position. Light danced through him in patterns Sarah had never seen before. The translation devices struggled to interpret. The sounds that came out were confused and uncertain. Finally, words formed. Crystal Prime said, "What you are doing is without precedent. No species has ever offered such a personal sacrifice for enemies not their own." Sarah's voice was steady despite the pain building in her head. She said, "Humans do unprecedented things all the time. That is what makes us useful. We do things that have never been done because we do not know they are impossible." She said, "The Zephrani have been following the same patterns for thousands of years. Beautiful patterns, harmonious patterns, but patterns that trap you. I'm offering you a chance to break free." Crystal Prime's light patterns flickered. He said, "Breaking patterns breaks resonance." "It destroys what we are." "No," Sarah said. "It evolves what you are." She had to speak carefully now. Each word took effort through the increasing pain. She said, "The Zephrani value resonance above all else. But what if there is a higher resonance? A resonance that includes change and growth?" She said, "Human musicians understand this. They create beautiful harmonies. But the most beautiful music is not the same note repeated forever. The most beautiful music changes. It grows, it surprises. That is what makes it beautiful." Crystal Prime went very still. His light patterns stopped their usual cycling. For several long seconds he was completely motionless. Then slowly a new color began to appear in his crystalline body, a color Sarah had never seen any Zephrani display, a deep, rich purple that seemed to contain all other colors within it. The Arbiter made a surprised sound. It said, "That is the color of first resonance. The Zephrani have not shown that color in 10,000 years. It is the color of profound change." Crystal Prime spoke. His voice through the translator was different now, softer, more complex. He said, "We have been afraid that changing our patterns would mean losing our identity, but perhaps we have been confusing stagnation with stability. Perhaps true resonance includes the ability to grow." He said, "Ambassador Chen, you have shown us something we forgot. You have shown us that evolution does not mean death. It means life." 12 minutes remaining. Sarah felt a wave of relief. But it was only partial relief. The Zephrani were convinced. But the Krath had not spoken yet. And the Krath were the ones who had calculated war as 78% favorable. Hive node 773 had been perfectly still this entire time. Its compound eyes were unfocused. Its body showed no emotion. But Sarah knew that inside that creature, an entire civilization was debating. Millions of Krath minds were connected, processing, calculating. And then something happened that no one in the council chamber had ever witnessed before. Hive node 773's body began to shake. Not violently, not dramatically, but visibly trembling. The Krath did not tremble. The Krath did not show physical signs of internal conflict. The arbiter spoke urgently. It said the hive mind is fragmenting. Different queen nodes are calculating different outcomes. The Krath have not experienced internal disagreement in 10,000 years. Sarah watched Hive Node 773 carefully. This was the moment everything could fall apart. If the Krath hive mind broke into factions, it could trigger immediate war. Multiple queens fighting for control. Chaos within the Dominion. But maybe, Sarah thought, maybe chaos was exactly what the Krath needed. She spoke directly to Hive Node 773. She said, "You are experiencing something new. You are experiencing doubt. You are experiencing multiple possibilities instead of one clear answer. And you think this is bad," she said. "But it is not bad, it is good. It means you are processing information that your previous models could not handle. It means you are evolving." Hive Node 773 finally focused its eyes on Sarah. Its clicking voice came through the translator in broken sentences. It said uncertainty is failure. Consensus is success. We have always known this. We have always operated on this principle. Sarah shook her head. The movement made her dizzy. The unshielded exposure was taking its toll. She said no. Certainty in the face of incomplete data is failure. Consensus without considering alternatives is failure. Real success means being able to say I do not know and then figuring it out anyway. She said, "The Krath hive mind is the most powerful computational network in the galaxy. But it has one flaw. It cannot handle true uncertainty. It needs all the variables, all the data, all the answers before it can decide," she said. "But the universe is not certain. The universe is messy and chaotic and unpredictable. The Omega sector is full of phenomena you cannot calculate. If you try to own it and control it, you will fail because you will keep trying to fit chaos into your models." She said, "But if you accept it as a preserve, if you study it without trying to control it, then you can learn to handle uncertainty. You can evolve beyond pure calculation. You can become something greater." 10 minutes remaining. Sarah swayed on her feet. The pain in her head was intense now. She could feel her heart rhythm becoming irregular. The various alien energy fields were interfering with her biology. She did not know how much longer she could stand here, but she had to hold on. She had to give them time to choose. Hive Node 773 spoke again. Its voice was different now. Less flat, less mechanical. It said, "The hive mind has never questioned its own methods before. We have always trusted our calculations, but your data suggests that perfect calculation in an uncertain universe is impossible." It said, "Multiple queen nodes are now suggesting that we need a new variable in our calculations. A variable that represents unknown unknowns, information that we do not even know we are missing." It said, "This is terrifying. To admit that our calculations are incomplete, to admit that we need something beyond pure logic. But the data from human history suggests this is true." Sarah smiled despite the pain. She said, "Yes, it is terrifying. Welcome to being uncertain. Welcome to being alive instead of just calculating." She said, "The Krath hive mind has been treating existence as a math problem. Find the right formula and you win. But existence is not a math problem. It is an adventure. And adventures require you to move forward even when you do not know what is coming next." 9 minutes remaining. Sarah's vision was starting to blur. She knew she was reaching her limit. The human body was not designed to withstand this much interference. The arbiter spoke. Its voice was filled with concern. It said, "Ambassador Chen, you must reactivate your shield. You are showing signs of system failure. Your biological functions are being disrupted." Sarah did not reach for her shield. She said, "Not yet. They need to answer first." Crystal Prime's purple light intensified. He said, "The Zafrani Collective accepts your proposal. We will withdraw our claim to the Omega sector. We will transform our position from ownership to participation. We will allow humanity to manage the sector as a galactic preserve." He said, "This is not surrender. This is transcendence. We are choosing a higher resonance, one that includes growth and change." 8 minutes remaining. Sarah turned her blurring vision to Hive Node 773. One empire had agreed, but both had to agree or the war would still happen. Hive Node 773 was still trembling slightly. The internal debate was still ongoing. But then slowly the trembling stopped. The compound eyes focused clearly on Sarah. It said, "The hive mind has reached a new form of consensus. Not unanimous agreement. Not perfect calculation, but something we will call adequate confidence in uncertainty. It said, 73% of Queen nodes believe your proposal offers better long-term outcomes than war. 27% are uncertain. 0% actively oppose. It said, this is our first decision made without full consensus. This is our first choice made with acknowledged uncertainty. We accept your proposal. The Krath Dominion will withdraw its claim and participate in the preserve. The words had barely finished translating when Sarah's legs gave out. She collapsed to the floor. Immediately, alarms began sounding throughout the chamber. Medical drones rushed toward her. But before the drones could reach her, something unexpected happened. Crystal Prime moved across the chamber faster than Sarah had ever seen a Zafrani move. His crystalline body positioned itself between Sarah and the various energy sources. He began resonating at a specific frequency that created a shield around her. At the same time, Hive Node 773 released a cloud of specialized pheromones. These chemicals counteracted the harmful effects of other Krath emissions. They stabilized Sarah's disrupted biology. The two ancient enemies worked together to save Sarah's life. They did it without discussion, without calculation, without planning. They simply did what needed to be done. The medical drones reached Sarah and began treatment. Her personal shield was reactivated. Color slowly returned to her face. Her heart rhythm stabilized. Her breathing became regular. The Arbiter spoke. Its ancient voice carried a tone that might have been awe. It said the countdown has been stopped. Both empires have formally withdrawn their claims. War has been averted, it said. Ambassador Chen, you have accomplished what no diplomat in galactic history has accomplished. You have prevented war between ancient enemies through pure unpredictability. Sarah tried to sit up. The medical drones insisted she stay down. She said weakly, I did not do it through unpredictability. I did it by betting that even predictable species could become unpredictable when they had to. She said, I bet that intelligence means more than following programming. I bet that consciousness means being able to choose something new, and I was right. Crystal Prime's purple light pulsed gently. He said you were right, and you proved it by gambling your own life. That is something no Zafrani would ever do. We protect resonance above all else, including individual survival, he said. But you showed us that sometimes individual sacrifice creates greater harmony than collective preservation. You have taught us a new form of resonance. Hive Node 773 added, the Hive Mind has designated this event as a Category 1 learning moment. It will be studied by all Krath for generations. Your willingness to act without complete data has been noted as a valuable strategy. It said, we are adding a new calculation variable. We call it the chaos factor. It represents the probability that uncertain action will produce better outcomes than certain inaction. You have taught us to value uncertainty. Sarah finally managed to sit up. The medical drones buzzed around her disapprovingly but did not stop her. She looked at the timer display. It was frozen at 6 minutes and 47 seconds. That was how close they had come. Less than 7 minutes from Galactic War. She looked at Crystal Prime. She looked at Hive Node 773. She looked at all the assembled species. She said, this is just the beginning. We have stopped one war, but the galaxy is full of old patterns and ancient conflicts. We have a lot of work ahead. The Arbiter's ancient eyes studied her. It said, yes, Ambassador Chen, much work indeed. But you have proven something important today. You have proven that change is possible, even for species 10,000 years old, even for civilizations that thought they knew everything. It said, humanity has been part of this council for only 40 years. But in that short time, you have taught the galaxy something it had forgotten. You have taught us that being alive means being able to change, and that is the most important lesson any species can learn. Sarah smiled. She said, we humans have a saying. We say that the only constant is change. I think the galaxy is about to learn what that really means. 3 weeks had passed since the day the galaxy almost went to war. Sarah Chen sat in a transport shuttle traveling toward the Omega sector. She was still tired. The medical drones had fixed the damage from her unshielded exposure, but the exhaustion went deeper than physical. It was the exhaustion of someone who had carried the weight of billions of lives and somehow managed not to drop them. But she could not rest yet. There was too much work to do. The Omega Sector Galactic Preserve needed to be established. Treaties needed to be written. Research protocols needed to be designed. And most importantly, Sarah needed to prove that her crazy idea could actually work. The shuttle's communication system chimed. A message from Earth. Sarah opened it and smiled. It was from her superior, Director Martinez. The message said that Sarah was now officially the director of the Omega Sector Preserve. It said that Earth was proud of her. It said that the United Nations had voted unanimously to support the preserve. But the message also included a warning. Director Martinez said that not everyone in the galaxy was happy about what happened. Some species were concerned. Some were afraid. Humanity had shown that they could break the rules and get away with it. That made humans dangerous in ways that other species were only beginning to understand. Sarah closed the message and looked out the shuttle window. She could see the Omega Sector ahead. It was beautiful. Swirling nebulas of gas and dust. Strange energy patterns that made the stars shimmer in unusual colors. Space itself seemed to bend and twist in ways that did not match known physics. The shuttle pilot, a young human named Lieutenant Park, spoke up. He said that sensors were detecting unusual readings. The energy patterns were even stranger up close. He asked if it was safe to proceed. Sarah smiled. She said, "We have no idea if it is safe. We have no idea what we will find. That is exactly why we are here. To explore the unknown. To study what we do not understand. That is what humans do." As they approached the sector, Sarah saw something that filled her with hope. There were already ships there. Zephrani crystal vessels that reflected the strange lights beautifully. Krath organic ships that looked like giant insects floating in space. And between them, human construction vessels were building the first research station. The three species were working together. Not because they had to. Not because of treaties or calculations or resonance patterns, but because they had chosen to. They had chosen something new. The shuttle docked at the partially completed station. Sarah stepped out into the docking bay. Waiting for her was a delegation. Crystal Prime was there, his body glowing with that deep purple color of first resonance, Hive Node 7. 7-3 was there, its compound eyes focused and alert. And with them were scientists from both species. Crystal Prime spoke first. His musical voice through the translator said, "Welcome, Director Chen. We have been preparing for your arrival. The station will be completed within 2 months. Both the Zephrani and Krath have contributed technology and resources." He said, "More importantly, we have been learning to work together. It is difficult. We do not think the same way. We do not solve problems the same way. But that is proving to be valuable. Our different approaches are revealing things that neither of us would have found alone." Hive Node 7. 7-3 added, "The hive mind has been processing the experience of cooperation. It is inefficient compared to pure calculation, but it produces unexpected results. 79% of research questions are being answered faster through cooperation than through independent analysis." It said, "We are learning to value inefficiency when it leads to innovation. This is a new concept for the Krath. You have fundamentally altered our approach to problem solving." Sarah looked around the docking bay. She saw Zephrani scientists examining Krath equipment. She saw Krath researchers studying Zephrani crystal samples. She saw human technicians helping both species understand each other's technology. It was messy. It was chaotic. It was not efficient or harmonious or perfectly calculated. It was beautiful. Over the next several days, Sarah worked to establish the basic structure of the preserve. She met with representatives from both empires. She set up communication protocols. She designed research guidelines. And she made sure that everything remained flexible. Nothing was set in stone. Nothing was permanent. Everything could change if it needed to change. That flexibility made some species nervous. The Zephrani wanted clear rules that would resonate properly. The Krath wanted defined parameters that could be calculated. But Sarah insisted. She said that the preserve had to be able to adapt, because the sector itself was unpredictable. And unpredictable it was. The research teams were discovering new phenomena every day, energy patterns that appeared and disappeared randomly, materials that changed properties based on unknown variables, space-time distortions that followed no known rules. 1 week into the operation, something happened that tested Sarah's entire philosophy. A massive energy surge appeared suddenly in the middle of the sector. It was unlike anything the scientists had seen before. The surge was heading toward the research station. Impact in 6 hours. The Krath scientists immediately began calculations. They analyzed the energy pattern. They calculated trajectories. They determined that the station should be evacuated. The probability of the station surviving the surge was only 12%. The Zephrani scientists examined the surge through their harmonic sensors. They found the resonance patterns disturbing, dissonant. They agreed with evacuation. To stay would risk all the personnel on the station. But Sarah looked at the data and saw something different. She saw an opportunity. She called a meeting of the senior scientists from all 3 species. She said, "The calculations showed 12% survival probability. That means there is a 12% chance we can survive if we stay and study this surge. And if we stay, we will learn more in 6 hours than we could learn in 6 months of normal research." The Krath scientist, a different hive node designated as Research Node 429, said, 12% is unacceptably low. Standard protocol requires 90% survival probability minimum. The Zephrani scientist, whose translated name was Silver Harmony, said, "The dissonance from the surge could damage our crystalline structures. We must prioritize safety." Sarah looked at both of them. She said, "And what do the humans say?" "Lieutenant Park, what is your opinion?" The young pilot thought for a moment. Then he said, "Director, we came here to study the unknown. This surge is exactly the kind of thing we need to understand. If we run every time something dangerous happens, we will never learn anything useful." He said, "I vote we stay. We came here to explore. Let us explore," Sarah smiled. She turned to Research Node 429. She said, "Run your calculations again. But this time, add a variable. Add the value of the knowledge we will gain. Add the breakthrough discoveries that could come from studying this surge. Factor in that this might be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." The Krath scientist hesitated. Then its compound eyes unfocused as it connected with the hive mind. After several long moments, it spoke. It said, "When we factor in knowledge value, the calculation changes. The expected benefit of staying exceeds the expected cost of evacuating. By this analysis, staying is optimal." Sarah turned to Silver Harmony. She said, "Look at the surge again. Not at its dissonance. Look at its pattern. Look at its structure. Is it really chaotic, or is it following rules we just do not understand yet?" Silver Harmony's light patterns shifted. He focused his harmonic sensors on the surge. He studied it carefully. Then his colors changed to surprised blue. He said, "There is a pattern, hidden within the apparent chaos, a resonance we have never encountered. If we can understand this resonance, it could revolutionize Zephrani technology." He said, "I changed my assessment. We should stay." So they stayed. Sarah ordered all non-essential personnel to evacuate, but she and the senior scientists remained. They prepared their instruments. They set up shielding. They made contingency plans, and then they waited for the surge to hit. When it came, it was terrifying. The entire station shook. Energy readings spiked to levels that should have been impossible. Space itself seemed to scream as the surge passed through. But the station held, the shielding held, and the scientists recorded everything, every reading, every measurement, every tiny detail of the most massive energy event any of them had ever witnessed. When it was over, the station was damaged but intact. No one was seriously hurt, and they had data, mountains of data, data that would take years to fully analyze, data that revealed secrets about the nature of space and energy and reality itself. Research Node 429 spoke first. Its clicking voice was excited. It said, "The hive mind is analyzing preliminary results. This surge was not a random event. It was a natural phenomenon that occurs in this region of space. Understanding it could lead to new forms of propulsion, new energy sources, technologies we have not even imagined." Silver Harmony's light patterns showed joy. He said, "The hidden resonance was even more complex than we thought. It incorporates elements of harmony and dissonance simultaneously. This contradicts everything we believed about resonance. It will force us to completely rethink our fundamental theories." Lieutenant Park was grinning. He said, "Director, we just survived something that had a 12% survival probability. And we got amazing data. I think we just proved that sometimes the crazy choice is the right choice." Sarah nodded. She said, "Yes, we proved that. And we proved something else. We proved that 3 different species with 3 completely different ways of thinking can work together when they have to. We proved that diversity is not just okay. It is necessary. She said. The Krath would have evacuated based on pure calculation. The Zephrani would have evacuated based on dissonance. But the humans saw opportunity, and together we found a way to make it work. That is what this preserve is about. That is what the galaxy needs to learn. News of the successful surge study spread quickly through the galaxy. Other species began to take notice. The Omega Sector Preserve was not just preventing war, it was producing real results, valuable research, new discoveries. And it was doing it through cooperation between former enemies. But not everyone was happy. Sarah received a communication from the Vrax Confederation. They were a militaristic empire that valued strength and discipline. Their message was blunt. They said that humanity's methods were dangerous. They said that humans were teaching other species to be unpredictable. They said this would lead to chaos. Sarah sent back a simple reply. She said, yes, it will lead to chaos. But chaos is not the enemy. Stagnation is the enemy. The galaxy has been following the same patterns for thousands of years. Maybe it is time for something new. 2 months later, the research station was fully operational. Scientists from a dozen different species were working together. The Zephrani and Krath had formed something unprecedented, a joint research program. They called it the Harmonic Calculation Initiative. It combined Zephrani resonance theory with Krath computational power, and it was producing results that neither species could have achieved alone. New physics, new mathematics, new understanding of how the universe worked, all because 2 ancient enemies had learned to work together. Sarah stood in the observation deck of the completed station. She looked out at the swirling colors of the Omega Sector. She thought about everything that had happened. How close the galaxy had come to war. How one human standing in the right place at the right time had changed everything. Crystal Prime joined her at the window. His purple light was steady now, constant. He said, Director Chen, the Zephrani Council of Resonance has made a decision. They wish to present you with a crystal of first resonance. Sarah turned to him in surprise. She knew what that meant. The crystal of first resonance was the highest honor the Zephrani could give. It had only been awarded 7 times in their entire history. She said, I do not know what to say. I am honored, Crystal Prime said. You helped us evolve. You showed us that change is not death, it is life. You gave us a new understanding of resonance, one that includes growth and transformation. We will never forget this. Research Node 4. 2-9 approached from the other side. It said, the Krath Queen Mind has also made a decision. You are now designated as an acceptable chaos variable, and your probability matrices have been added to the permanent historical record. It said, this designation means that the hive mind recognizes you as a source of beneficial uncertainty. Your decisions will be studied by all Krath for generations. You have changed how we think about probability and calculation. Sarah smiled. She said, thank you both. But I did not do this alone. Every human who ever refused to accept that war was inevitable contributed to this. Every human who ever chose hope over calculation contributed. Every human who ever changed their mind at the last second contributed. She said, humanity's gift to the galaxy is not technology or resources. It is perspective. We show other species that there is always another way, that nothing is truly inevitable, that change is always possible. Lieutenant Park's voice came over the communication system. He said, Director, we are receiving a message from Earth. They want to know when you are coming home. Sarah thought about that. Home. Earth. She had not been back since the crisis. She missed it. She missed gravity that felt right. She missed air that tasted normal. She missed being around only humans. But then she looked around the observation deck. She looked at Crystal Prime with his purple light. She looked at Research Node 429 with its compound eyes. She looked through the window at the station where dozens of species were working together. She said, tell Earth I will visit soon. But my work here is not finished. The Omega Sector is just the beginning. We have shown that cooperation between enemies is possible. Now we need to show that it can last, that it can grow, that it can become the new normal instead of the rare exception. She said, the galaxy spent thousands of years following the same patterns, making the same mistakes, fighting the same wars. Someone needs to show them a different path. and humans are the perfect species to do it. Because we are the only ones crazy enough to try. Crystal Prime's light pulsed with what might have been laughter. He said, yes, you are certainly crazy. But it is a useful kind of crazy. The galaxy needs more of it. Research Node 429 added, the hive mind has calculated that humanity's chaos factor will continue to disrupt galactic patterns for the foreseeable future. Some species will resist this, some will embrace it, but none will be able to ignore it, it said. You have changed the galaxy, Director Chen, not through force, not through superior technology, but through the simple act of showing other species that they can change too. Sarah looked back out at the Omega sector, the swirling nebulas, the strange energies, the mysteries waiting to be discovered. She thought about how close everything had come to disaster, how 6 minutes and 47 seconds had separated peace from war, but those 6 minutes had been enough. Enough time for two ancient empires to choose something new, enough time for the galaxy to step back from the edge, enough time for one human to prove that unpredictability was not weakness. It was enough time to change everything. Sarah smiled and turned away from the window. She had reports to write, research projects to oversee, diplomatic meetings to attend. The work of building a new kind of galactic cooperation had only just begun, but as she walked toward her office, she felt something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. Real hope. Not the blind hope that ignores problems, but the informed hope that comes from knowing that change is possible, that people can grow, that even ancient enemies can become partners. Behind her, Crystal Prime and Research Node 429 stood together at the observation window. The crystalline being and the insectoid creature, two species that should have been eternal enemies. Two civilizations that had nearly destroyed each other, and they were watching the stars together, learning together, growing together, all because one human had stood up and said that there had to be another way, all because one human had refused to accept that war was inevitable, all because one human had been willing to gamble, everything on the possibility that intelligence meant more than programming, that consciousness meant more than following patterns. That being alive meant being able to choose. The galaxy would never be the same. And that, Sarah thought as she sat down at her desk, was exactly the point. Change was not the enemy. Stagnation was the enemy, and humanity had just taught the galaxy's oldest civilizations how to evolve. It was just the beginning. But it was a good beginning.